there are more dogs than children in the United States right now. Fastest growing population of dog parents is under 35, and they are twice as likely to spend money on their dogs than they are themselves. There's a huge change in the status of the dog in the family. And so this whole mindset around the dog as part of the family and the pet humanization trend is relatively new. And the pet services to support the new feeling around dogs, it has not kept up.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here.
So, was really excited to connect with you. We got connected through Teddy, the CEO and founder of Street Fair, who's episode 5 on the bell curve, which was great. This is one of our best performing episodes, which is cool. Super early on.
High bar to beat.
High bar to beat. I think people liked his...
Are you giving me tips right now?
He cursed a lot. You don't have to curse. We had to like bleep some stuff out. I think people liked his personality for sure. But yeah, he was definitely probably our more like seemingly like scrappy entrepreneurs. But after hearing your story, I think I found you interesting because of just how many times you've had to change your business, especially during COVID. For any entrepreneurs who are listening to this, who have been through COVID and had to lay people off and, change their business models. It was a very painful time. And I thought you guys did a great job of it. And now, Skiptown, which is, the company that you founded and run and own, which we'll get into, is now like a staple, is like super famous here in Charlotte, and you guys are expanding. So we're really excited to talk about that.
Yeah. Excited to jump in.
So Meggie, tell us a little bit about like your background. Like, where do you come from? Where'd you go to school? And then, how did you transition from the workforce into like getting the bug for entrepreneurship?
Sure. Yeah. So I hail from the great state of New Jersey. Grew up there, the Garden State, aptly named. I came down to school in North Carolina. So I went to UNC Chapel Hill.
Nice.
And I graduated in 2010. And then after I graduated, I moved to New York. And I started working for IBM as a global business consultant.
Great. And what kind of stuff were you doing there at IBM? Were you like fairly technical? Were you like, integrating new stuff that they were bringing on? I thought you had done something with Watson or like some of the early
Yeah,
AI
I got to work on some really cool projects. Initially, as the 22-year-old, fresh out of college consultants, I remember one of my project managers at the time used to call us arms and legs because we were just kind of used as like fill-ins. We were billed cheaply and, staffed on projects, but it was a cool program because it was rotational and I got a lot of exposure to different aspects of businesses. And then as I worked, my way, as I got more tenure and experience and built out my network within the IBM community, I was able to join and participate in pretty cool projects. The most kind of notable being the Watson project. So at the time, Watson supercomputer was like coming out and being used mostly for healthcare. And we were piloting the first use case of Watson predictive analytics at a commercial bank, Citibank.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. So I got to be on the strategy team for piloting that use case of Watson in financial services. And then I finished my stint at IBM, and my husband and I, at the time, were dating, and we got engaged, and we were avid travelers, both of us kind of individually. And we knew that we wanted to take a trip at some point early on in our marriage. And so after we got engaged, I gave up my New York lease, moved in with my mom. So did Seb, and we saved money, and then we did a 9-month backpacking trip around the world.
Wow.
After we got married. Yeah. So, and when we came back, I started my startup journey. So
you left your job and y'all traveled 9 months full time.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. That's bold.
Yeah, it was bold.
Yeah.
I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So when are you getting the idea for what is eventually going to become Skiptown, right? Is it when you move here in Charlotte? Are you kind of ideating or just enjoying life like during your 9 months, or Is this always kind of been like a passion that you've had since growing up?
Yeah, I mean, animals have always been a big part of my life. We used to rescue injured birds and squirrels and bring them home. We always had dogs. So animals were always a part of my life. We lived in New York and wanted to have a dog, but we couldn't because it was New York and we traveled. It didn't make sense. But what we did instead was we would watch other people's dogs on the weekends. And this was kind of like the early version of dog vacay, when that was like just coming out, and people were starting to like use other people to help them take care of their dogs while they were away. And so we kind of had this like side business. And it was mostly a chance for us to get to play and interact with dogs because we couldn't have one of our own. And it was during that time at, circa, 2013 that I started to, actually earlier than that, started to really understand that there was a pain point here that was not being solved for pet parents. And really for the pets, for the dogs. And I was kind of observing the marketplace and just not really seeing what I thought would be a really scalable modern day solution. And this was always in the back of my mind. And then as I kind of my professional career and tenure continued to evolve toward startups and eventually running my own business, it was just always something that I was like, somebody should be doing this better. And why aren't they? Like, why isn't there a better option here to accommodate the modern lifestyle for dogs and people? And ultimately, that's what we're here for today, is to do that.
Nice. So you move here to Charlotte. Do you immediately start the company?
No. So I worked for a different startup at the time.
Gotcha.
That was based out of the Bay, raises Series B. I was running warehouses, helping sell furniture. And that startup didn't make it, ran out of funding. As it does. And then I left that company and then realized it was just a perfect time for me to start this. It's kind of funny because at the time it was like, the company didn't make it, but prior to that, there was massive layoffs and they shut down all of our markets, in the markets that I ran as the Southeast, general manager. And at the time it was such a blow to like, just the idea of being laid off. And I was such an ambitious and like, that just felt like such a failure, right? Such a moment of failure. And it was, looking back on it, the biggest launching point of my professional life was to have had that happen, feel like, okay, now what do I do? And I can do anything, because that felt like the lowest point. So anything else is up. And it was at that point that I had I just had the confidence then, and I guess the energy, and the realization that I wanted to go try to build this business to solve this problem that I've been witnessing for, the 5-10 years prior.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your attitude going into founding your business? Were you scared? Were you more excited? Where it's like, I have a clear vision for this. I'm so certain, I'm going at this 100%. No one's going to talk me out of this.
I mean, it was kind of aligned to my attitude on everything, which is, we'll figure it out when we get there, and we'll, constantly reassess, and, we have information. So let's make the best decisions we can off of the information that we have. And when we get new information, let's make better decisions from that. So it was really just kind of one foot in front of the other. There wasn't really a grand plan other than like, I see that there's a problem here. Somebody should fix it. I'm going to fix it. And then as I got more information and learned more about the market opportunity, learned more about our clients, and what they wanted, and really understanding what the opportunity could be, and all of the things that come along with just time, like time spent just grinding through a business and learning from it. It got us to where we ultimately are.
Yeah.
Which is very different from where we started.
I think the questions we get the most is about like funding and like starting a business, getting a business off the ground. For folks that kind of listen to the podcast. For you, starting this first business, did you bootstrap it, or did you immediately kind of go out to investors? Hey, I have this idea. I know it's going to work. Here are the pain points, and like, here's how I'm going to execute it.
No, we bootstrapped it for 1.5 years.
Wow.
We didn't know any better. But I think it worked out for what it was. But no, I was the first dog walker. And for 1.5 years, my husband ended up joining me for a couple years in the beginning, left his job to join me when my bandwidth got, so tight, because we were doing, 10, 15 walks a day, and I needed more help. And then he came on, but we were packing the cars with coolers for all of our meals, and we would leave the house at 6 a.m. and we would get back around 10. And all day we were doing dog visits, walks, sits. So it was a lot. But it was kind of the training that I needed to figure out what was I doing. I actually listened to a lot of podcasts on the walks, like hours a day, like entre leadership. And I just remember all these podcasts that I had to just like trying to understand and learn and feel like, okay, how do I take the next step here? Because we were getting traction and what we were doing was working, but the demand was outstripping our supply. And it was like, how do I scale this? How do I bring other people into this, train them, empower them? Make sure that the quality was going to be as good as I knew I could make it. But obviously me being the dog walker was not the long-term, solution, but figuring out how to connect the dots was a big learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that business is eventually what grew to you having to pivot this during COVID.
In a roundabout way. So we started as a dog walking business.
Yes.
We had technology that enabled that service so that people would get visit reports on their phone, and it allowed us to get to really create custom services for each dog. And then so we grew that business from just me as a dog walker to over 70 dog walkers. We were doing about 230 visits a day. I think at our peak it was about $1 million run rate. At that point, we had gone through TechStars, which is an accelerator program. We moved out to Texas in Austin to go through that program. We learned so much from the mentors there, from the managing director who joined our board later. And then at that time, we started to understand who our client was and what they needed. And our client lives in apartments. And so we started approaching apartments saying, hey, let us help you. Let us kind of bring a concierge service to your residents who are needing dog care that you can't provide. And that evolved from just doing dog walks in a building to actually building on-site daycare and boarding facilities inside of these apartments. We were the first company to do that. And it was really kind of addressing a need that multifamily has, which is more than 50% of their residents now have dogs. And that is a drastically different demographic profile than what existed 10, 20 years ago. You couldn't even have a dog in an apartment. And now the majority of residents have dogs, and these apartment buildings aren't equipped to support that. So we were working with these apartment developers, apartment owners to build out these facilities. And at that point, we had taken out a loan to invest in technology, which was probably one of the best decisions we made. And now when I advise companies or I'm talking to people who are early stage, I'm very skeptical of like spending money on tech too early on, because there's so many platforms out there that you can use. And a lot of times it's like, where you waste a lot of money because the MVP is not what you want. You haven't really done the product market fit. It worked out for us having the technology be a foundation of how we would grow, because it's a huge differentiation to what we provide, because the tech is so lacking in our space. So at that point we had our own tech, and we really saw what our tech and our processes and our people could do. And then right before COVID hit, we were actively, looking to pivot from the just dog walking business to a brick and mortar ecosystem. We had been serving clients through daycare and boarding services through our apartments, and we had so much demand. We were like, you know what? We need a freestanding facility. We need to be able to cater to our clients who live in apartments, but we want to do it in our own building. And we signed a lease for Skiptown, the flagship facility, in December of 2019. And then we all know what happened 3 months later.
And that facility, 24,000 square feet, mm-hmm. It's big. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
they're all big.
That's a big rent
mm-hmm.
as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge risk. How long of a lease did you initially sign for?
10 years.
10-year lease.
Yeah.
Wow.
Personally, guaranteed on it,
yeah.
Of course.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We had the conversation. I remember sitting in the kitchen with Seb, and we had done this before when we had taken out the SBA loan to fund the MVP, the technology initially, back in 2017, 16. And I remember us being like, okay, so if this doesn't work, we lose our house. And are we okay with that? Like, what do we do if that happens? And it was always like, well, we would rent. We would, luckily we have safety nets where it's like we would, I don't know, go live with my mom like we did before we traveled. It was just real things. Like we were really putting a lot on the line. And then it was the same conversation signing that lease. It was like, okay, like this is, are we all in? And luckily, I think in order to be able to do something like this, I have a partner who believes in it as much as I do, right? And is willing and on board to do that. But I recognize how unique that is, because not everybody feels that way. And not everybody has the risk tolerance that we both do.
How'd you get your husband to buy in on that?
Honestly, I think he he probably came up with the idea before. I mean, I did. I mean, he was like always equally enamored by the opportunity, and we would sit there and talk about it, years before I ended up doing anything. So no, he got it too. And I think he also, and we have like-minded mindsets around how we approach opportunities and risk. And, I think that at the end of the day, usually the worst case scenario is never that bad, and we'll figure it out when we get there.
Is he still are you guys partners, like business partners? Like, is he still working in Skiptown and like super involved, or he's got his own thing going on now?
He exited the business a couple of years ago. He was involved for several years, and was, a senior leader in the company. And then it made sense for him to move on and take a different opportunity. But he's still obviously very supportive, and we talk all the time about it. And he runs a construction company, so sometimes
that's helpful.
Gives us quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys leased the facility basically 2 months or 3 months before COVID seriously hits.
Yep.
Are you guys starting to build out the interior of the facility by the time the pandemic comes in? Are you right in the middle of outfitting the space and painting the building purple and all that good stuff?
No, we had gotten our vendors on board, like our architect, our GC, project managers. We were in the process of going through permitting and zoning. Did lose pretty much all of the fundraising that I had built to build it.
Totally.
So that was a huge blow. And that took about, it's just I remember I was in San Diego for a conference, and that's when the NBA was shut down that day. Mm-hmm. And it was just this weird feeling of something is happening and it's not good. And at that, a couple hours later, I got calls from 3 investors who had committed funds, who were wealth managers, or they, had clients abroad, and they were like, I'm pulling out. This is going to be a global event, and I'm not investing anything right now. And that was just a huge wake up call. So I took the red eye back to Charlotte. I remember texting my leadership team at 4 a.m. and I was like, whenever you can get into the office, get into the office, because we have something to talk about. Because it hadn't really hit here yet. Things had not really gotten to a place where things, businesses were being shut down, or, schools were being closed, anything like that. So the team comes in, and I was like, hey, this is serious, and the world is different now, and whatever we were, we cannot be, and we have to figure out who we're going to be, because this is going to be a shitstorm. And it is amplified by the fact that at that point, all of our revenue was coming from dog walking, which is having people come into your home while you're away at work, which were 2 things that were not compatible with COVID, right? You didn't let anybody in your house, and you weren't leaving your house. You didn't need dog care. So we went from, I think we lost 95% of our revenue in a week.
Oh my God.
And we saw the writing on the wall. When I flew back from California, I knew, I was like, this is the beginning of the end for whatever it is that we are doing, and we need to change fast. And we did. We lost 95% of our revenue in a week. We had to let go of 90% of our team. Most of them were dog walkers full time. Furloughed a third of our back office team. We reduced salaries across the board. I stopped taking a salary. Mm-hmm. It was kind of everything, just we just pulled everything in to reassess and just see what was going to happen. And that was kind of when we went from, I think of, when I look back at it, it was a peacetime scenario and going into a wartime scenario, and how the mindset shifted. Mm-hmm. But then ultimately we were able to get the fundraising back, 60 days, 90 days later. I had found a new group of investors, got the funding back. We were able to stay on time and on track with the construction. And we opened on time in August of 2020.
Wow.
Which was, challenging in and of itself, because we were opening a bar still in the middle of COVID. But we did it in a way that was safe. We had a lot of space on our side. Everybody was adopting dogs so there was still shifts happening, and we were able to successfully put Skiptown out there. Sight unseen, we sold out of our founding membership. So we had over 800 people sign up to be Skiptown members, before we even launched. So there was a lot of proof points to what we were doing. Yeah. And because we were going about it at such a difficult, time in the world, we recognized that there was something there, right? When you can build that kind of traction at such a difficult time when it was so easy to say like, oh, it's COVID and this isn't going to go well. We knew that there was something that was going to outlast.
Okay. So you go from a peacetime to a wartime scenario very quickly. How long do you think the wartime kind of period lasted? And then talk about what that did to you, like as a person, and then how you changed even like your persona, leadership in the business, all that good stuff.
I think I found an inner calm that maybe I hadn't really accessed to that level before, because it was such a shaking experience to your core to just have so much of the things that you've built and worked and the people that you've worked with just change so drastically overnight, and to have to make those decisions. In some ways, there was a lot of clarity, right? Once we got to the nuts and bolts of it, of like, okay, so we're in a situation now where what is the mission? What is the critical work that needs to be done? And how do we really hone in on what that looks like? And everything else we don't care about. And at the time we had signed Skiptown, we knew we were going to open a Skiptown. And all the services that went along with it. So it became almost a clarifying, simplified exercise to say, this is what matters. Everything else doesn't. Cut it all out. So control spend, get your burn down, focus on critical path work, which was opening Skiptown and delivering the Skiptown experience that we were envisioning. So that helped us redirect and course correct. We have a core value at Skiptown called head to weather. And it's a nautical term, and it means to steer your boat in the direction where the oncoming winds are coming, so that the waves don't capsize your boat. And we talk about it all the time, like course correcting and reevaluating. And that's kind of what we were doing. And it was like, it felt natural because we'd done it before. We aren't strangers to like, having to make, crunch time decisions and having kind of resources that you thought you had be taken away. This was obviously to a whole nother level, but it still kind of felt like, okay, there's some familiarity here and we know how to do this and we're good at this and we can embrace this. And that's, what we did.
Do you feel like, was that like traumatic, the whole experience for you? Do you feel like you were like, oh man, I have to talk to a therapist after this? Like I've like talked to some founders who like had to see a therapist because they had to lay off a bunch of people. They feel super guilty. Looking back, it's like, man, we got funded 12 months ago, 6 months ago. We were not good stewards of the investment that it is that we got. I know I felt that way. And, ultimately just like, crap, I have to recover from this. Some people did, some people didn't. You guys did. Did you have any of those like emotions kind of bubble up for you, kind of like a PTSD from like the whole experience?
I think what centered me was our core values, was knowing that I had signed up to create a financially sound business that was going to positively impact dogs and people. That's the mission. And I was going to like live and die by that. I was going to do what was right for the company. And everybody knows that. We're going to make the best business decision. That's why we get funding. It's why we bring stakeholders in. It's why the team, we're all running toward this mission. And I just had that directive. And I was very clear about, listen, the function of your role has to be critical to the path we're on. And, we did as right as we could for everybody. And at the time, luckily the support programs that the government was giving to employees that were laid off were supportive. And I knew I had talent on the team that I wanted to protect. And, at the end of the day, like the people that you have behind your mission is everything. It's like, that's the execution potential, right? You can have a great product market fit. You can have a ton of demand for what you're building. The market opportunity could be huge. If you don't have the right people behind it, you're nothing. It's all about execution, and people are behind that execution. So it was about holding on to the great talent and kind of moving forward. And I just feel like also it wasn't an event that was happening to me singularly. We were all going through it. I have a lot of founder friends, a lot of people in startups and other businesses that were facing different challenges because of COVID. And in some ways in a lot of ways, it's really inspiring to come out of challenging situations whole and to kind of be able to move forward. And I tried as best as I could to kind of use it as an opportunity to gain strength and to say, hey, like, this is why we're here. This is why we do the hard stuff, because we're going to like muscle through this and we're going to figure this out. And we did.
Yeah, you would have done really well in the Army. Like, especially basically everything that you're talking about is like what they teach and what they kind of ingrain in the system, right? Whenever we're going through years and years of training, especially special operations, and you're expected to go out there and it's like, hey, shit's going to hit the fan at some point. Things will happen to your buddies, will happen to the team, and then sometimes it's going to, God forbid, happen to you. And your ability to not only process the information and get through it to the other side, but as well, like, okay, this happened to me. Like, I've prepared myself. I know what I'm doing going forward, whether that's continue working, whether that's getting well, whether that's whatever. Being able to also just keep that in perspective. Sometimes you need to compartmentalize when you need to, but then, you know, at the same time, be doing the work to make sure that you can keep moving forward because there's people depending on you. Yeah. And I found, you know, especially in your situation, you're the CEO, right? You got like people looking up to you, you're paying payroll, you have investors that you're accountable to. A lot of the time, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier having responsibility, easier to get to those tough times because there's so many other things to focus on aside from you. And so I think for you guys, when I think about the companies that did really well during COVID, it's the people who knew what their mission was. They had a vision for the company, and then they just got, you know, really financially disciplined, you know, luckily, because we didn't know PPP was going to happen. We didn't know like the unemployment benefits were going to be as good as they were, and people were going to stay not working for such a long time because maybe they were making more. I don't know if y'all ran into that with dog walking or how much you were paying your people, but in a lot of ways, it makes a lot of sense why y'all came out the way that y'all did. And then now you're in a situation where it's like, holy crap, like we have real backing behind us now. Like you go onto the Skiptown website, I know where the next 6 locations are going to be. What is it, like Dallas, and y'all are expanding into more like major cities. I think your real estate play is like very interesting. I do want to talk about it because I think it is very different from what I've seen in other companies, and also like want to be educating the audience on like, hey, having a service business where you engage directly with clients and you provide something that's really tangible while also like either owning real estate or having some component of real estate can be like a really good way to actually grow a business going forward, especially if you own the real estate, right? Because you could buy a piece of land, develop it. There's an arbitrage there, maybe 100 basis points, 150 basis points on cap rates for people who understand commercial real estate. You could sell the property, basically get a whole bunch of capital injection into the company and then lease it back for 10 years, as long as you're willing to personally guarantee, which unfortunately I think you will have to for a long time. But going along with that, you know, how do you think about now into this next stage of the company? So for people who are not familiar with where you guys are at specifically right now, you have one location that's operating here in Charlotte. For folks who are familiar with Skiptown, we know that you guys are expanding. And you guys, I think it's public, I read like 27 mil in capital injection. What form did that funding take? Is it private equity? Is it venture, some debt all mixed into it? How did y'all end up going about like raising the money? And how do you actually think about like scaling with the financial products that you guys got in the door?
Yeah, and maybe it would be helpful if I shared what Skiptown does.
Sure.
Okay. So Skiptown is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle for dogs. It's a lifestyle for their people. It is the first ever one-stop shop, and it is an ecosystem for dogs and people that incorporates pet services and a dog-focused bar and park. And there's technology that kind of enables all of those services on the back end, so to support our team and also to support our human clients. We have 3 clients. We have our people clients, our dog clients, and our team. We have technology that supports all of them and allows for this very streamlined, consistent, high-quality service to take place across multiple different areas. So for pet services, we have full-day daycare, boarding, grooming, dog walking. We'll be adding training and pet insurance in the near future. On the bar side, we have a full service bar and park where we sell beer, wine, mixed drinks. And then we have memberships. So to take advantage of those services, you can become a member, whether it's monthly or annual, or you can pay a day pass. And then that grants you access to be able to take advantage of our services. But the idea is that we are elevating the standard of pet care under one roof, enabled by one technology platform. Back to your question about fundraising. So we closed our largest round. I don't know if it's a Series A or B. It's kind of both. 27 million with extremely strategic partners. And that was really important to me going in, that we were going to find the right partners. We've always to date been historically good at that. I'd say on the team side, on the investor side, just finding people that got what we were doing, that had the right kind of value set, and were really supportive on our mission and helped us, get to where we were trying to go at all stages, right? From when we were a dog walking company to when we were pivoting to this apartments model to present day where we're, brick and mortar and an ecosystem for all services. So we got really strategic partners, and this was I guess I had a baby in February. And so really after February, we really kicked off the fundraising. And so we spent close to a year finding these partners. And then just last November, we closed the round, and then there's a secondary round that we're also raising. So the round could grow up to 50 million.
Wow.
Which would be pretty historic in the sense of, how much capital is raised in this industry, in pet services. I always say that it's been, until recently, kind of like a forgotten, almost sidestepped market. I mean, there's so much opportunity. There are more dogs than children in the United States right now. The fastest growing population of dog parents is under 35, and they are twice as likely to spend money on their dogs than they are themselves. The pet industry is recession proof. It is one of the only industries that actually has grown in the last couple recessions, dips. And, there's a huge change in the status of the dog in the family over the last 20 years. And we're an interesting generation because we've seen both. When we were growing up, when we had dogs, it was like our parents got dogs after they had kids, and the dogs probably, had a dog house in the yard, and you don't do that anymore. I mean, your dog is your kid. You get a dog, the first age, the average age of first time dog adoption is 22. It's like people in college getting dogs. That was never done 20 years ago. And so this whole mindset around the dog as part of the family and the pet humanization trend is relatively new. And the pet services to support the new feeling around dogs, it has not kept up. And we see that opportunity as a way to just step in and be the first and best nationally recognized brand to elevate the standard of pet care across the country.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, people are obsessed with you guys. Like when they go and actually see Skiptown, because it's like, I was counting with 8 streams of revenue in one location, basically. And then you expand nationally. That's a lot of money coming in from all the different ways that you can help people. Kind of, I don't know, do you call them hubs? Did I think about that correctly, or hear that correctly? Where it's like, hey, this is where all of what we do happens, and then everyone's kind of coming in and out, and not only experiencing not just the dogs, but like, hey, the beer's good, like a lot of local beers, like we love going there. And then there's like really cool rules. Like, can't have your dog on a leash, and it's just like the dogs go nuts, right? So I think that's really cool. I think that's super unique. I think a lot of folks think about like untapped markets being like new technology, AI, a lot of the stuff that's crypto. Seems like everyone was doing some kind of crypto thing over the last 2 years. For my friends that were fundraising, had a little bit of a harder time fundraising because it's like, nope, all the big VCs were pumping money into crypto companies, not into anything that was like old school SaaS or had any type of like brick and mortar component or even just like e-com component. It's like a little bit harder to do that. So for you guys, I think being able to, I mean, it's like you were in the industry for a long time. Like you've been doing this business for over 5 years now. It seems like, right? 5 or 6, 7 years at this point. You're pretty intimately familiar. You know exactly like what the consumer is looking for. You see kind of this trend like happening, and then it seems like it really accelerated we got a dog during COVID.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody did.
Mm-hmm.
How quickly before you open to like things really picking up? It's like, wow, we're oversubscribed. Like this place is full. Like we're making money. I wouldn't say hand over fist, but like this has become like a way better business model than the $1 million run rate we were doing just dog walking.
Yeah.
From when you opened up in August 2020.
Well, I mean, before we launched, because we were selling memberships, and we used that as a litmus test to see, what was gonna happen, and we sold out of our founding members.
And so when you opened, and like those people showed up and like brought their.
I mean,
friends.
they bought memberships without even seeing the location. It was under construction. You couldn't get in. I was doing hard hat tours, so we were for like a select group of people. We opened up the doors, and I would take them around and show them where walls would be, and we all wore hard hats because it was safety code, because there was it wasn't built yet. But yeah, we sold out of our founding memberships. We knew.
Wow.
We knew
how much were you
okay.
selling memberships for at the time?
$280.
Yeah. So like not a small investment for like a customer who's
for a
it's
dog
like a real
club.
Opt-in. It's not like $1, or like $10.
No, it was a meaningful decision.
Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the location that you guys are at, if you don't mind, I do want to talk about like, okay, so you have this capital injection. It's like kind of like a lot of money. I feel like at the stage of which you guys are at, but it makes sense because you do have like real estate build outs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much it costs to build out the interior of your property, but being in the real estate business, tenants are spending anywhere from like $250,000 to, some of these guys here that where Loso is being developed, upwards of $3 million, $4 million just for a restaurant build out.
Yeah.
That they don't get to recoup.
Yeah.
And so it's like the business has to be successful for that to work. Is that what the majority of the money is for? Making sure that you can actually open the locations, or are you guys really looking to add more to the employee base and invest in the technology? Like what's the play for you guys moving forward?
I mean, it's kind of all of the above. I would say majority of the capital goes to expansion costs. So we are, they're capital intensive. We model a payback period that's strong, and the model's great. It's a great model, so we're excited to be able to showcase it across the country. We're also making additional investments in our people. So we always say that in order to be dog focused, we have to be people focused.
Yeah.
So investing in our team, and we want to be, on the leading edge of how we create environments for team members to feel confident, safe, thrive, bring the best versions of themselves to work. And so we're doing a lot to support that. We have over 100 full-time employees at each location, not including our corporate team. And our people is what makes, the world go round. And it's our team who enables, the successful and quality driven services that we provide. So that's foundationally, that's number one. And we've invested in that on the corporate side. We have a people team, and we've had HR for a very long time. And HR is kind of an outdated word, but just how we invest in people, how we equip them well, empower them, make sure they know what success looks like. And then on the tech front, I mean, again, it's a big part of what we're able to do at scale, and quality control the services, and make sure everybody knows what success looks like in their role, and take a lot of the manual effort out of it, which this business, the pet care business, is currently the status quo. It's very manual driven. It's clipboards. There's tech deficit, with it out in the industry. And we are trying to solve that and make it easier for our pet care providers to do their job and interact with their dogs, which is what they want to do. And then the technology is built to support them in that mission. So yeah, investments all over. We're making some critical key hires on the corporate side, which is exciting. It's really exciting to be able to continue to bring in levels of experience and talent that I just see how that moves the needle and really drives us forward. So we're very fortunate to have built something now that is attracting very tenured people who are super excited about what we see the opportunity. And we have just, really invested and committed people on the team who have grown up with the company and have gotten it to where it was. I mean, it is not about it's well beyond me and my, impact at this point. It is the team that I put around this that are, responsible for the success that we've seen. Because again, it's all about the people.
Yeah. So how have you seen your role as like the CEO, like kind of change from, we're opening a location, we're doing this tenant build out, to now it's like, crap, we're moving into different cities now and people are going to know us as like a national brand. What does your day-to-day look like now?
I'd say, my role has always been at a high level, three things: building and maintaining the culture, setting the vision, and making sure we had the resources to go do it. So cash in the bank, right? And that we're properly resourced generally. And that has not really changed. I mean, that's somewhat changed. There's nuances now because of where we're at, but ultimately those are the big three. I'm a continual learner, and I love how the company and the team all together, we all level up to the new challenges that we're faced with. And, we are here to be stewards of the trust that we seek. It's another one of our values is integrity. And, at every impasse and at every turn, it's just we just kind of redefine it a little differently based on the situation, but it's kind of the same. It's the same, themes going forward, and everybody's like everybody's really bought into what we can do. And it's like, can we go do it? And that's what we're trying to figure out. It's like, let's go do this. Like, let's go execute on the potential that this company has, because we have put it in a place where it has massive potential. Now let's go get it.
Totally. Yeah. That's inspiring. That's so fun too. It seems like you guys know exactly what you're doing. You're well capitalized. You guys may even have additional opportunity to go even further with the secondary that you guys are raising. Mm-hmm. What's next? What's the next step for y'all? I know y'all have kind of identified markets. What's Skiptown doing in the next 6 months, or what are y'all doing in 2023?
Yeah, so I heard this recently and I really liked it, where the scale up is the new startup. So we've done the startup. Now we're in the scale up phase.
Yeah.
And so the next 6 months, the next phase is national expansion, and not only maintaining the quality control that we've built, but enhancing it. So how do we continue to be better, do better, provide better for our dogs, our human dog parents, and then our team? And that's what we're focused on. So, we have so many of the building blocks in place, but we kind of know where the gaps are, and we're just slowly trying to close those gaps. And then in the same time, we're trying to anticipate the needs that we're going to have and the challenges that we're going to face opening remote locations, which comes with its own unique set of variables and issues and challenges and opportunities. So trying to face those head on and to kind of be as proactive as possible. And that's what we're all about. And we're very lucky to have really good partners around us in all fronts, the team side, on the investor side. And so we're right now just like heads down, focused on building and being able to deliver a really quality product when we open new locations next year.
So when's going to be the next location for Skiptown, and when should we expect to see that come on live for any of the folks that are listening in these cities?
Yeah, so we'll be announcing that soon. The next 3 cities will be Houston, Denver, and Atlanta.
Nice.
All coming up very soon.
And are y'all doing leases as part of your strategy, or are you actually like trying to purchase property and capitalize on that as well?
Those next 3 sites will be leases. We're pursuing and evaluating other opportunities, different methods of real estate development and acquisition. But right now we're doing leases.
Very cool. So last question. I know we're like coming up on time here. We always like to ask at the end, for folks that are just starting their entrepreneurship journey, weirdly, half the people we've talked to have started their journey in consulting or like in finance or something like that, coming right out of college. For folks that are thinking about potentially making the entrepreneur jump and starting a company, what do you think is like the most important thing that they can be doing right now before they actually start that business?
Yeah, I would say get a service or a product out there as fast as you can that you can actually sell for money, and then take a step back and watch and listen how your customers respond. I think you learn so much just putting something out there, even if it's not perfect. And I think there's like an entrepreneur dilemma where you workshop everything in a room, in a box, and you get it all the way you want it. And then you realize you haven't really been like clued in to what people are telling you, the market's telling you. You're so locked into what you think the answer is. You're not maybe even solving the right problem. And so what I say is just to conserve, to amplify, to expedite the learning curve, to save time, to save money, to save the potential burnout. Just throw something out into the world and see how the market reacts and learn from that, and try to be open-minded as possible, because we started in such a different place from where we ended up. And, sometimes I'm like, we learned so much and we did make pivots, but we could have made those pivots faster potentially, right? If we had been really absorbing it and really understanding like what was working and what was not working. And I just, I say that all the time. It's like, the product market fit is everything, and you never get there on the first try. You don't get there on the 10th try, and it's okay, which is another reason, going full circle, why I really hesitate to ever recommend investing a lot in technology, because you don't know what problem you're solving more than likely. You
Fair.
need to you really need to test the tires. So that's what I would say.
I think that's really good advice. I think if you just focus on that and like what exactly you just said, you could potentially save yourself like a lot of years, and like gray hair and money coming off of that as well. So
yeah,
Meggie, we really appreciate you guys coming on here on the Bell Curve, and I think your story is extremely inspiring. I'm making a prediction that everyone's going to know you in Skiptown nationally in the next 3 to 5 years. I think you guys are going to be like a household brand, especially within these major cities, and as y'all expand to now even more tertiary markets. We're really excited to follow along and even maybe have you on in the next year or so.
I love it. I'll take that bet. Well, thanks very much for having me. It was fun to be here.